Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet. I'm Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's James Anderson. James, I want to start the show by taking another public L on Hunter Greene, man. Got the bump up to AAA since the last time we talked. I was just dead wrong. I put too much into what I saw with my own two eyes in spring training. Breaking ball command didn't seem to be there. He was leaving stuff over the heart of the plate, but it's clicked since, and now he's just one step away.
Yeah, I'll take another big L on Hunter Greene. I know that we occasionally will have someone who maybe hasn't listened to all the podcasts or all the radio shows asking us to take another L on Hunter Greene, and I'm happy to do so.
I've never been happier to take it now because I'm a fan of the team, but I just didn't think he had the secondaries or the command to be a top-notch starter.
I think the most impressive thing for me is just the fact that he's gone 5+ innings in every start this year. Even he's got a few where he walked a few too many guys, but even in those starts, he's going deep into his starts. And most pitching prospects this year have been going like 4 innings per start, just in an effort to sort of manage their innings. And the fact that he's having these incredibly impressive results, but also turning lineups over multiple times, it's been really, really impressive.
Yeah, somebody on Twitter was asking if it's time to stash, and I was actually embarrassed by the timing of it because I had actually just stashed him in NL only Hunter Greene, and I thought maybe I'd tweet that, but I thought nobody would really believe me. I guess I'm a sucker, and again, I didn't really like what I saw in the spring, but he's just been so dominant. And the Reds, hey, couple games over 500 now, taking it to your crew. I know they're playing right now. I can't watch them because they're blacked out here. So annoying. The blackout. Top third, 0-0, Reds Brewers. So the Reds, I thought maybe a couple weeks ago they might be sellers, but maybe they bring up a guy like Greene. You already saw Tony Santillan. Maybe they make another push to go for it. I could see it. Santillan, I did not think looked very good. Command was all over the place. He was effective enough, but he really lost hold of the command. James, I know you've been updating your individual org top 20s. Is Hunter Greene the Reds' top prospect now, would you say?
Well, I did the top 400 update probably 10 days ago or so, and on that I had Nick Lodolo over him. Lodolo was really, really impressive in his own right. Now he's on the IL at AA with a blister, I think. But if I re-updated everything today, I'd probably have Greene ahead of Lodolo. But I mean, it's really close. Both those guys, take big L's on both those guys because I was too low on both Reds hurlers, and I would agree with you. I think Greene probably does get a look this year if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I think so too, because they've had some injuries, and it's good to see Castillo coming back, but pitching okay. But I think now that he's bumped up to AAA, it may only be a month and a half before we see Greene. So I did go ahead and stash him. It was actually eerie how close it was to that tweet when it was like within minutes I'd picked him up, and the guy asked if it was stashing season on Greene yet, and it is. I could see that. We'll talk a little bit more about your work ranking prospects in each organization, but we did have a question from Fabulous DJF. I'm putting it down at the bottom of the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate those who are tuning in. Any insight as to when Brujan or Duran will come up? We could just touch on this briefly. I know Duran's continues to make some noise down there.
Yeah, I mean, Brujan's actually cooled off a little bit. I think he would be up as an injury replacement. I don't really see a obvious way to shoehorn him into enough at bats for it to make sense for them to bring him up right now. So I think if you see, Joey Wendell, Brandon Lau, even if G-Man Choi got hurt, they could move guys around. Any number of the outfielders getting hurt could result in Brujan getting a call. So I think you're basically just waiting for an injury with him. And then with Duran, he was playing in the Team USA qualifiers, but he's back with Worcester now, and he's been hitting. He's got 2 hits in each of his last 3 games. So I would not be surprised if we saw Duran get the call before the end of the month.
Nice. Well, let's get into these orgs specifically. And you've gone through and updated the individual top 20s for each organization. Your big top 400 update, what was that, a week ago, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah, about a little over a week ago.
Nice. So as you were evaluating things, we know the Rays have a deep system. The Dodgers have an embarrassment of riches, both at the major league level and in the system and the farm. Any other systems that you were, as you were ranking players, thought, oh man, this is kind of a deeper system than I realized?
I'm not. I do this. I spend so much time on this stuff that I'm not really surprised. But I just wanted to note the 5 systems where they had at least 20 guys represented in the top 400. Like you said, the Rays, no surprise there. The Dodgers, obviously, just they kill it on all fronts: trades, draft, international market, and they just seem like they're just always going to have one of the 5 or 10 best systems in the game, no matter what. The Rays do clearly, to me, have the number 1 system. Like, I don't think it's debatable at all. They have everything you could possibly want. They have guys that are close to the majors, hitters and pitchers. They have guys in the lower levels with upside. So the Rays are just absolutely stacked. As good of a farm system as we've probably seen in a while. And then Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the New York Yankees are the other 3 that have 20 plus guys in the top 400. Not surprising on Cleveland. We talk about them a lot in terms of just being absolutely loaded in the lower levels, and they're probably going to be the first team to kind of challenge the Rays for the top system in the game here, but that's probably over a year away. And then Pittsburgh obviously has been making a bunch of deals to rebuild, and they've done a really nice job with that. So they're represented very well in the top 400. And the Yankees, you might not think of them as having a great system because they don't have guys that we're like waiting for to get the call to the majors, right? Like we talk about the Rays guys a lot, but the Yankees are really loaded in the lower levels. They've got a lot of good young arms. They've done really, really well on the international market, and they probably have a lot of volatility, more volatility than most of these teams, just in terms of the guys who are on the top 400. Like, some of these guys are just really boom or bust, but they've got a ton of upside, and they've got the pieces to go acquire, anyone they want at the trade deadline without giving up their top 2 or 3 guys.
I guess I was projecting my own surprise about seeing the Pirates listed. Obviously, you do this. It's basically, your life in a sense. But I'm a little surprised to see the Pirates as a top 5 deepest system for you, because I guess I just hadn't had it in my head that they were this far along in their rebuild.
Well, yeah, I mean, they did really well in the Jameson Tyone trade. They got some guys, obviously, in the Joe Musgrove trade. And they've just – Brian Hayes actually just graduated, I think, yesterday. But it's not – a lot of their guys have been in the system for a while and have just been kind of slowly working their way up. They might
like
not
Jared,
have –
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it looks like Jared Oliva's barely holding on to a spot in the org ranks.
Yeah, I mean, he's 25, and there's sort of some short side platoon risk with him. He really needs to hit to get a look as an everyday guy. But
yeah, only a 650 OP. Oh, he's only played 2 games. I guess he was hurt.
Yeah, he was hurt.
Yeah.
They don't have the Pirates. It's probably more quantity over quality with them right now, especially now that Brian Hayes has graduated. They don't have a ton of guys that I think have like the potential to be top 50 prospects, but they've just got a lot of guys that could be top 100 guys. So I mean, I understand why you'd be surprised by them being in there, and they don't have that sort of really high end upside with a lot of these guys. But I think there's this misconception that the Pirates are sort of a laughingstock regime, and people just are translating kind of the past regime to this new regime, and it's been much better since Ben Cherington and company took over.
Yeah, the product on the field at the big league level is still embarrassing.
Oh yeah,
but a lot better days to come for Buccos fans. Let's talk shallowest systems in the bigs. Which one would you say is the shallowest, James?
I think it's very clearly the Chicago White Sox, and there's no shame in that. I mean, they did with their farm system what you're supposed to do with your farm system. They graduated guys, and they're helping the big league club. And some of the guys they graduated aren't even helping the big league club because they're hurt right now, and they're still having an awesome year. So it's not a major slight on Chicago that their system is the worst in the game. It's clearly the worst in the game to me. I mean, they don't have a single guy that has any argument to be a top 100 prospect. And realistically, like I've got Benjamin Bailey in my top 200, but he's hanging on by a thread, and he won't be a top 200 guy when I add the new draftees in a few weeks. The other guys that are in the top 400, like Jared Kelly's had a really rough start to his pro campaign. Jose Rodriguez is an infielder who's had a nice start to the year, but I mean, it's kind of a stretch to say that he would be an impact player. The White Sox, when I was updating their top 20, it's more than half of the top 20 guys in that system are guys that I would strongly bet don't ever become regular big leaguers. So they're in a weird position where it's going to be a buyer's market once again at the trade deadline, I think. And they're obviously a contender, and they could use some help. But if they want to add any impactful players at the deadline, the guys that they're going to have to trade are already on the big league roster. Guys like, Kopech, Vaughn, Crochet. Like, I know that White Sox fans don't want to trade any of those guys, obviously, and I wouldn't want to either. But they don't have anyone on the farm that could get them a big time impact piece at the deadline.
Yeah, really have to win a title in the next few years with La Russa. We'll see if it happens, because that window is eventually going to slam shut. But they do have a little window here next 2 to 3 years, I'd say, to win a title. James, the Phillies have been in a spot where they they've been trying to compete ostensibly, but just never, in my opinion, have realistically had enough these past few years to make a real run at the title. And, they got Bryce Harper locked up, but looking at the system, do you think they're ever going to be able to put enough around him? Or are they always just going to be towing this middle line for the next decade?
Yeah, I think that they are, they have one of the more sort of hopeless futures of any team in the majors. I mean, it's kind of, their rosters are different, but it's kind of like the Angels. They're kind of like the Angels of the NL, where you have this star player locked up long term, but you just don't have the pieces either on the big league roster or really in the minors to give you a ton of hope of cashing it in for a title. I mean, like the Nationals have a really bad system too, but at least the Nationals won a World Series recently. And the Phillies are in this really bad spot where they can't rebuild because they've spent a ton of money on guys like Harper and Wheeler, and they have like Aaron Nola in his prime, and it's not something that they could sell to ownership. I don't think that we're going to tear it down, and yet they aren't really realistic contenders to me, and they don't have a lot coming on the farm. I mean, their best prospect is probably Mick Abel, who's like 4 years away. Bryson Stott has had a nice season, but he's really their only position player prospect on the farm that you could say has a strong likelihood of being a everyday big leaguer. So there's not a lot coming in Philly, and they're probably a little shorthanded on the big league roster as is.
Alfonso Lassane asks or says in the chat, please tell me Franco's up. To my knowledge, Wander Franco's not up, but we're still waiting. We're still on Franco watch.
It is worth noting that he now, like with Vidal Brujan kind of, it's not scuffling, but like he's cooled off. Franco does probably have the statistical case over Brujan at this point. He's not on the 40-man roster, but it's, I used to be pretty confident that Brujan would get the call ahead of Franco. I'd probably still bet on that, but it's closer than it used to be for me. I think Franco could get the call. It's just a question of like what would have to happen. Like, does someone have to get hurt? I mean, how bad would Taylor Walls have to play over how long of a stretch for Franco to replace him? Because Walls has been pretty solid. And so it's a really tough call to make in terms of when he'd be up. I think it's a tough call to make in terms of when Shane Baz will be up too, because he's kind of been just as impressive as Hunter Greene for the Reds, and I think he's put himself in the position to be an option to join the big club as well. Joe Ryan could join the big club on the pitching side as well, and Josh Lowe's been awesome all season. So it's really tough to predict how the Rays are going to handle these call-ups when they've got like 4 or 5 really deserving guys at AAA.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on Franco, but I don't think he's going to be able to save my labor team, James. I just lost Glass now, and I think that's the last straw. So that's unfortunate. I'll keep grinding, but I think Vladdy's not going to be able to carry the team by himself, so we'll have to see. Before we move on, let's sort of a quick word from our sponsors. Now we are back on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. And James, last week on the XM show, we had Matt Thompson on from Prospects Live and from Friends with Fantasy Benefits. He seemed, frankly, a little down on how the Cardinals front office has run things lately. We know they've lost guys like Arozarena. Didn't they? I didn't realize this, but Matt mentioned, and you mentioned, that they traded both Gallen and Alcantara in the Ozuna deal. It's kind of hard I didn't realize that. It's pretty insane. And looking ahead to the future, do you think it's, what's to come is kind of underwhelming for St. Louis?
Well, they have a better top prospect than any of these other bad systems we've talked about. Nolan Gorman. I mean, I guess you could say Cade Cavalli for the Nationals is right up there with Nolan Gorman. But Nolan Gorman's been a really good story this year. He's been making a lot more contact. He's been walking more. And Jordan Walker's been a great story. Mason Wynn's had his moments. And we've talked about Alec Burleson being kind of a surprise hit in last year's draft. But the depth in the Cardinals system is really, really bad. Like once you get past like their 8th best prospect, Tink Hence, it's just guys who have never played in professional ball, just guys they've signed in recent J2 classes, guys that have performed poorly. I mean, it falls off a cliff really. So they don't have a ton on the farm to trade. I think that they at least have a decent amount of talent at the big league level. They've really been hurt by injuries in the rotation, but I don't really see this Cardinals team having the juice to really make a push in this year or future years. They're kind of in that middle ground that you don't really want to be in.
Yeah, I mean, the NL Central seems pretty wide open for the taking, although your Brewers are really strong and the Reds are coming on. Cardinals, I believe, are still above 500, but barely, and they just don't really seem to have that guy who could really, or multiple guys who could come up and help this year, or a lot to dangle in a trade. But We'll
They at
see. They
least,
always seem to come on somehow.
yeah, I mean, that's sort of what separates the White Sox is just being just this far and away worse system is even with like the Cardinals, the I mean, I think the Nationals are realistic about not really being true contenders this year, so I don't think they will be buyers. Um, the Philly, I mean, at least like the Phillies and the Cardinals have a couple guys where they could trade for pretty much anyone that's going to get moved at this year's deadline. Like they would have to empty out the system probably to do so, but they at least have a few appealing pieces that other teams would want. Like the White Sox, like I said, they don't have anyone, and it's really kind of it's tough to do even when you graduate as many good players as they have in recent years to just not have anyone left on the farm that any team would like. They could not trade for Max Scherzer without trading guys that are already on the big league roster, and that's crazy to think about.
It absolutely is. The Detroit Tigers, another one of your 5 shallowest farm systems. And they're calling up Matt Manning. We talked about him a few weeks ago, and we were like, no, this can't be a realistic option because he's really struggling at AAA, but they're going to give him a look anyway. He is tomorrow's starter against the Angels. Little surprise.
Yeah, the shine has really kind of come off Matt Manning, and he used to be one of my top 3 pitching prospects in the game.
Yeah, he was a big name prospect for a while there.
I mean, he was a guy that I really really wanted to see last year when they called up Casey Mize and Tariq Skubal, but Manning got hurt last year, and it just hasn't been good this year. He at least his last start at AAA was probably his best start of the year. The home runs that he was giving up like 2 home runs a game early in the season. He's at least kind of improved on that a little bit. But, anything can happen. I mean, predicting how any pitching prospect's going to do when they first get to the majors is a fool's errand. So I don't want to say that Manning can't have success. I mean, he certainly has the stuff to have success if he's on and he's locating his pitches. But I wouldn't go nuts to add Manning in redraft leagues right now. He's just, I think that they want to see how he does. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was back at AAA before the end of the month, though.
Looks like he went 6 innings in his most recent start, June 9th against Louisville, and allowed 2 earned runs, struck out 8. The numbers overall, though, really bad this year. But I could see, looking at his 2019 numbers, as a 21-year-old at AA, 133 2/3, 148 Ks, 256, 0.98 WHIP. You totally see why there was a lot of shine at one point. You mentioned that's kind of worn off, but what was the injury last year? Was it arm, I'd imagine? Arm?
Yeah, it was
forearm.
It was a forearm, yeah. So, I mean, I thought he was at risk of needing Tommy John surgery by now, and he's avoided it. But maybe some of his struggles this year can be attributed to the fact that he's not pitching at 100%. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's like you said, he has gone 6+ innings multiple times, and so maybe he's healthy. I don't know. It's just kind of a messy situation. You typically don't see a pitching prospect of his caliber get the call when they've been pitching this poorly for the majority of the year, but here we are.
Yeah, that is a little surprising to see, just given the surface numbers. Maybe they liked what they saw in that June 9th outing, and they're just like, hey, let's give him a chance, but a little surprised.
I did want to, yeah, I mean, you hinted at like them having like being included in the shallowest systems. Like they have absolutely no excuse to be in this company, right? Like,
yeah, they've been rebuilding for like a decade. It feels like
if you
or at least
eliminate
like 5 years.
Yeah, if you eliminate the players they got in last year's draft, then they only have 2 guys in the entire top 400 that were not drafted in last year's draft, Riley Greene and Matt Manning. So that's the 2019 draft for Greene, the 2016 draft for Manning, they don't have a single player from the 2017 draft in the top 400, and I don't think they don't have a single player from the 2017 draft in their top 20. They don't have a single player from the 2018 draft in the top 400. They've just really had a bad run in terms of the draft. I've never really liked their taste in guys on the international market either. They seem to end up with these guys who are physically more mature than you'd like and are going to slide down the defensive spectrum. They end up with a lot of guys who just strike out too much. They did have a good 2020 draft, but they also had, I think, the biggest bonus pool. Actually, that might have been the Orioles, but I mean, they had one of the top 3 bonus pools last year, so they should have had a good draft. It's been just a disaster rebuild, really, and I mean that front office is probably not going to be around to see the fruits of this labor if if it ever does bear fruit.
I know those top 2, Greene and Torkelson, a lot of excitement behind them, and Riley Greene in particular. At least in spring training, he was lighting up, Statcast TrackMan numbers, and the batted ball numbers do suggest he could be an impact player. But yeah, behind the top guys in the system, it's bad. But so it's Al Avila, right? Who's going to be.
Yeah, Al Avila should maybe
should take the fall. Probably
he should probably get working on his resume. Although I don't think there's a lot to point to there. But
he'll find a job in baseball. I don't feel too bad for the guy, but
no,
I mean, because we've heard at least through leaked reports that he had chances to trade some of those arms, like Michael Fulmer, I think it was.
Fulmer and Matt Boyd, yeah.
He had opportunities to improve this team, and just, it's really bad, man. And at least Jonathan Scope's been crushing it at the big league level. I was surprised to see they DFA'd Wilson Ramos the other day because he had been crushing it early on. But I guess they just were like, this isn't going to help us at all. But I guess they figured nobody would trade for Wilson Ramos.
No, I mean, he was they signed him like, I mean, every team could have signed Wilson Ramos this past year and chose not to.
It's kind of crazy to see, though, a guy who's, I guess his average had really fallen, but he had 6 homers and was swinging it well early on this season. James, let's move on from the systems and talk about some unranked gems that you threw in our outline today. I will include these with the show notes, if you're all right with that, James.
Yeah.
For the podcast. So check these out. You kind of label them Joe Gray All-Stars. Joe Gray, we've talked about on the show. That's the most boring name, but that kind of makes it all the more apropos to have him as the front man for this list of players.
Yeah, so Joe Gray was someone that I totally – these are all guys that basically should have been ranked on the top 400 update, and I just whiffed on ranking them, and Joe Gray is like the leader of that pack. Like he's in the top 200 now, but I whiffed on adding him initially, and yeah, I mean he's obviously had a great year. We've talked about him. The first guy I want to talk about is actually Joe Perez, another Joe, but he's in Houston's system, and a lot of people will remember that Perez was one of the Astros' top picks back in 2017, and then just was really limited by injuries and barely played at all. But he's just been awesome this year at low A, and then he got the bump up to high A. And we've talked about that, like how you always love when any hitting prospect gets a quick promotion early in the year, because that obviously means their team is buying into the performance and wants to give them a challenge. And of course, we have to note that he's been playing in some pretty hitter-friendly environments, particularly at Asheville at high A. But our minor league hard hit data on Joe Perez is very promising. He's 38.6 hard hit That's really good for a minor leaguer. And he's just been absolutely crushing it at both stops. Someone that I think you can go out and scoop up today in a lot of your dynasty leagues, even the deeper ones. I added him in a few this morning, and he's got huge power. It's all about the strikeout rate with him, and so far he's kept that in check. And I think that he's just one of these guys that obviously took the time during the pandemic to really improve and get healthy, and it's just been a great start to the year for Perez.
Now, William Contreras, still prospect eligible, I'm guessing. Yeah, because it's like 126 career plate appearances. He's cooled off a little bit lately. Actually 0 for his last 13, but you still like what you've seen, and you think he's got a pretty bright future behind the plate in the big leagues.
Well, yeah, he's not a top 200 guy, and he's going to graduate obviously before he would get a chance to move up there. But I wanted to note that I should have ranked William Contreras on the last update. I'd been lower on him just because, and this is really challenging and actually probably worth discussing. Like when a team has multiple really strong catching prospects, it gets really difficult in terms of how you should rank them, because that there's only so many. Like a guy's not going to move off catcher if there's a logjam, right? Like a guy could at shortstop or center field or something like that. There's only so many starts to go around a catcher for every team, and they have Shea Langoliers, who was their first round pick a couple of years ago, who's been awesome this year. And I assume Shea Langoliers is the catcher of the future in Atlanta. They invested a ton in him, and he's a really good two-way player. He's a good defender, probably a better defender than William Contreras. But that's why I was low on Contreras, is I was like, well, at best, he's going to be sharing time with Langoliers in a couple of years. But Contreras has been more impressive than I would have thought, particularly in the power department. Another org, just while we're talking about this, that's really making it tough on me is the Dodgers, because like Will Smith was my top ranked catcher for dynasty leagues on the dynasty update a couple weeks ago, but they've also got Keibert Ruiz, who has been amazing at AAA and has really seemed to just be kind of hitting a groove offensively. And they've also got Diego Cartaya, who's just been destroying low A. And all three of these guys are just really impressive young catchers, but they're all in the same org. And Cartaya is far enough away where you're not really going to ding him for being blocked at the big league level. But like, what do you do with Keibert Ruiz, who in really any other org would be probably a top 100 prospect for dynasty, but because he's with the Dodgers, it's just like, at best he's going to play like 40% of the time because of Will Smith being there, and you need like a Will Smith injury almost. And I can't picture the Dodgers trading these guys because they are such valuable assets. Anytime you have a catcher that is going to be solid defensively and an impact hitter, like those are the toughest things to find, and the Dodgers might have three of them. And so it's just really tough to figure out how to rank these guys given the team context.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to point out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a point when Keibert Ruiz was kind of a higher ranked prospect than Will Smith even was?
Yes.
Yeah. And like that just adds to the struggles and the long-term picture there and seeing that picture.
Yeah, because there was a point where Ruiz seemed like the better bat of the two to me. Like Will Smith might have been the better OBP guy, but I back when Will Smith was in the lower levels of the minors, I thought he was going to be a low average, high walk rate, high strikeout rate, power hitter. He's obviously just really improved with the hit tool over the years. And Keibert Ruiz was kind of the opposite, where I sort of thought he would be like a Jonathan Lucroy type of guy, where it was hit over power. But Ruiz is just, he's still 22, I think, and he's got 8 homers in 21 games at AAA. I know it's a hitter-friendly environment down there, but for a 22-year-old catcher to be doing that at AAA with a 13.5% K rate, this guy's a stud, and he's got nowhere to play.
Really impressive. It's really impressive. I imagine beginning next year we probably will have the universal DH, which may help a little bit, but Hell, I mean, the Dodgers have so many other options. Like, still be a logjam, I'd imagine. Do you think that will get included, or do you think there's too much to negotiate through already? This CBA.
Well, first of all, like this is, I mean, if there's a work stoppage, it's 100% on the owners, but I think there will probably be a work stoppage. And
you thinking that at this point?
I
Scary.
mean, the it's, I mean, the owners are just so awful that I just don't see them budging on
Yeah, I
stuff
wouldn't put
for the
anything
player.
past them.
Right. And that's something, I mean, it's kind of morbid to talk about, but it's something worth considering in Dynasty too. If you're like a rebuilding club or something, you should be aware of the fact there might not be a season next year. And so, like, I think there's a case for targeting guys like Dustin May or Matthew Allen, guys who've recently undergone Tommy John surgery, maybe Tyler Glass now, because if there's not a season next year, these guys that have had Tommy John surgery this year will be fully recovered for 2023.
That's a good point, man. Yeah, I could see it. Unfortunately, I'm dreading that possibility, but I think it is a possibility we have to mentally prepare for. I am with you. And this whole spider tech thing, Rob Silver was pointing it out. It's such a transparent way to just paint the players as villains and they're all cheaters, and it's just such a clear. The timing of it is so clearly manipulated to show poorly on the players.
There's going to be so much propaganda from the owners through the John Heymans and Bob Nightingales of the world, where they're just going to be running constant propaganda that it's the players who are greedy, the players are cheating, like all this stuff, and it's obviously complete BS. And
like this spider tech thing, or just sticky substances in general, this is not a new thing.
No,
but they bring it up now to midway through the year to begin planting the seeds through the media, and that was part of Rob's point, that the media is a tool in this whole thing.
Also, color me not surprised, but including sunscreen and rosin.
Yeah.
Like, we knew this isn't like hindsight. Like, we've known for a while, and even like Mike Schilt in his like famous press conference from like a month ago, like there's a huge difference between using sunscreen and rosin and using spider tack, and yet MLB just lumps it all in together. And it's tough to say. This is always the trouble with analyzing the commissioner's office. Like, it's tough to say whether they're just incompetent or whether there's these decisions, but they're either like evil or they're incompetent. Like, it's one of the two. And so I don't know, whichever one they want to be. But yeah,
maybe both.
Yeah, they might be evil and incompetent. Yeah,
I think it's evil that they bring up this crackdown now, and then it's just incompetent that they include. It's evil that they want to paint the players as cheaters now, but incompetent that they include sunscreen and rosin in there with spider tech. Yeah, it's pretty insane, man. It's kind of like I love baseball more than anything aside from my family in this world, James. But it's hard sometimes to forgive and overlook some of the idiotic things they do. And the owners, make it difficult sometimes. But Kyle Bradish, moving on here, James. Another name I'm not familiar with, but it was on your Joe Gray All-Stars list. What can you tell us about Kyle Bradish of Baltimore?
Yeah, they acquired him. He was kind of the best player they got back from the Angels in the Dylan Bundy trade a few years ago. And he's been crushing it at AAA. His last start was his worst start of the year, but on the whole, he's got an ERA under 2. He's got 49 strikeouts in 32 innings, and I just thought he was worth mentioning because he is at AAA, so he's probably going to make his big league debut this year if he stays healthy. So obviously, Orioles pitcher. I mean, that's a tough team context to have success in for fantasy, just given the ballpark and everything. But you will probably see Bradish join that rotation here at some point.
James Caprillion, Daz Cameron, a couple old friends, old names that we're familiar with, and they're having some success at the big league level. And you kind of regretting maybe not having them ranked a little higher?
Well, yeah, they fell off the list, I think, for fair reasons. I mean, I think coming into the year, Caprillion, I thought he would be a reliever for Oakland just because of his history and his durability issues. But I think he's looking like, a solid number 4 starter, which is, not sexy, but he's pitching, he's healthy. It's just a really good story that he's able to do that. Cameron, it's only been like 5 games, so I wouldn't look at the batting average there, but I mean, he really improved at AAA and improved with the strikeout rate. I don't know if he's going to play enough to be valuable in fantasy, and maybe he just gets sent back down here in a few days or something. But he's got power and he's got speed, and we're always looking for that. Obviously, I mean, like getting Jake Fraley for free is helping swing some leagues right now. And I don't know if Daz Cameron's got those plate skills that Fraley has, but I think he's got the same type of power speed combination you're looking for.
Yeah, and Caprillion, he's gone at least 5 in all but one of his 6 outings. So it is good to see him going, deep enough to qualify for a win pretty much every time out, including one of those was at Colorado. So good run this year for Caprillion, and mostly unrelated, but in that same division, I was just thinking about Logan Gilbert, and good to see him turning it around. Definitely, I think if he was dropped after those big disappointments early on, go out and grab him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's helping that Stake League team. I know I'm lucky to be holding on to Eater territory. We'll see how long that lasts. More Joe Gray All-Stars here, James. Justin Bullock, right-hander for the Brewers. What can you tell us about Bullock?
He's the definition of a pop-up prospect. Did not know who he was coming into the year, but he was absolutely dominant at low A, which, he's 22 years old. We don't have to read a ton into that, but he's got a deep arsenal. He's got a good breaking ball, got a solid changeup, low to mid 90s with the fastball. And he got the bump up to high A and was excellent there in his first start, struck out 10 in 5 innings, didn't walk anyone. So Bullock is a name to keep in mind. The Brewers are obviously quite good at developing pitching. But there's also a Red we can talk about, another Red. I know we started the show with some Reds pitching talk. Not as well known, but Graham Ashcraft is a righty in the Red system who's been excellent at high A, and he's older. He's 23, but generating ground balls at a nice clip. He's got a deep repertoire. He's been throwing enough strikes. So a couple guys in the NL Central there that are at high A that are worth keeping an eye on in deeper leagues.
I love it. Ashcraft, not somebody I know very well, but I'll have to keep an eye on him. I grew up with a guy named Graham. Actually, just reconnected with him somewhat recently. And it's always fun when you reconnect with a guy you grew up with, and just kind of reminded me of that. Brady Singer, James. Sorry?
Oh, what were you going to say?
I just saw that Brady Singer was removed with right posterior shoulder tightness today. So that sucks. They're saying it's a precautionary measure, but I'm bracing myself for more and more pitching injuries without, with this sudden shift with their preparations and how they're actually pitching.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Maybe we see Lynch get the call again.
Yeah, I could see that. I was really disappointed with the Coar run, but that's how it happens. You take your chances on some of these guys. Sometimes they blow up in your face. I heard something that, along with Coar, like the jump between AAA and the majors is as difficult as it's ever been. Have you heard something about that? I don't know if that's just anecdotal or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it checks out to me. I mean, it's certainly true on the hitting side of things, because the pitchers at AAA for the most part are not the best pitchers in the minor leagues. You're going to see just a lot of like veterans that have been around, kind of like the quad A version of a pitcher hanging around at AAA, and then you get to the majors, and the level of stuff you're seeing is just a whole nother level completely. And on the hitting side, I mean, when you're used to teeing off against 92, 93 with okay off-speed stuff, and then you all of a sudden have to face some of these guys in the majors. I mean, there's a big learning curve there.
Yeah, it's hard to hit the ground running for sure. Now, I'm looking at some of these names, pretty difficult running names here, so I apologize in advance if I butcher some of these. Diego Rincones, outfielder for San Francisco. Is he kind of a pop-up guy too?
Not really. I mean, with the rest of these guys, I can just kind of run through just quickly and just mention them quickly. Rincones is a guy who really shows up well on our minor league hard hit data. I think he's got a 45% hard hit rate, and he's someone who's sort of been on and off the Giants top 20 list over the years. He's bat only, basically. Like, he's not going to add much value defensively at all, so he might be a DH candidate. Jahmai Jones is a guy that might be relevant in redraft leagues this year. He's obviously someone that was a top 100 prospect back with the Angels a few years ago, and the Baltimore Orioles picked him up. He's been on an absolute tear at AAA. I think he's been walking more than he's striking out. Plays second base, outfield. So I think there could be a spot for Jones at second base at some point this year for Baltimore. So in like AL only and deep mix leagues, I think he's already maybe worth an ad if you can. And then the Yankees have a few guys that are old for high A that are tearing it up. Ken Waldachuk, I don't think has given up a run yet, but I kind of want to see what he does at Double A before ranking him. I mean, he's a lefty with some deception in the delivery. Hayden Wesneski is a righty with the Yankees who's doing great too. He's also 23 and at high A, so I kind of want to see what he does at Double A. On the position player side, Ezekiel Tovar was a obvious omission by me on the last top 400 update. He's a middle infielder with the Rockies. He was a notable J2 guy a few years ago. He's really doing well at low A. Felix Valerio with the Brewers. He was part of the Keon Broxton trade with the Mets a couple of years ago, and he's kind of got some Gene Segura vibes. He's really impressing at low A. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed. He's on the smaller side, so he probably ends up at second base, but worth keeping an eye on him. And then Aldo Ramirez, righty for the Red Sox, is tearing it up at low A right now. And then three Rangers righties that I thought were worth mentioning are Ronnie Henriquez, Yeri Rodriguez, and Takoa Roby. Pretty strong names for all three of those guys, and they're all off to really good starts. So monitoring all these guys, they're probably all going to get added to the top 400 on the next update. But obviously, a lot can change between now and then. That'll probably be after the draft, but I have been just adding some of these guys at the bottom of the list when guys like Brian Hayes and Zach McKinstry graduated. I added like Justin Bullock and James Caprillion this morning, so you will see some of these guys probably slip onto the top 400 as more guys graduate.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate these unranked hidden gems, these Joe Gray all-stars. You're talking about Texas, and I just wanted to mention DeMarcus Evans. Did you end up grabbing him in any leagues last weekend? I got him, and then I saw Spores blew a save, so it was kind of.
Well, I had that Spores blown save in my TGFBI lineup.
Oh no!
And then I think
Sorry,
I think I have. Oh man, I can't remember what league it was. I think I added Spores and DeMarcus Evans in one league, just really sort of hedging to try to get that Rangers bullpen locked up. But
those 5 second half saves, push you over the top.
No. I mean, dude, if
I added Evans, so I get it.
If I had like 15 more saves, I think I've got like 16 saves or something like that right now in TGFBI. If I just had 15, 20 more saves, so basically just end up with any of these random closers that are having good seasons, I would probably be number one in the TGFBI overall right now. But just when you're that bad in one category, it's tough to really push up into that top 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's a tough category to figure out this year, especially. Fabulous wanted to know too in the chat where we can find James's articles apart from Twitter, RotoWire.com. And then Robin Clark said, hey guys, Wander Franco 12-team Fab League. How long should he wait? Do you think he's a stash in a 12-team mixer, Franco? I know you're sick of these questions at this point.
Well, no, I mean,
with Wander Franco specifically.
I don't mind. I'm always happy to answer prospect questions, dynasty questions. I'm probably not. I don't really have time to answer like just standard redraft questions, especially when it's like a 50-50 call. Like, I'd answer so many prospect questions that it just got to draw the line somewhere. But
you're great about it. I just realized, imagine with him specifically, you're probably sick of.
Well, it's just I'm going to constantly just tell you that I don't know. I mean, I don't know when he's going to be up. If I did, then that would mean that I was like really tight with someone really high up in that front office, which I'm not. But I will say that in a 12-teamer, like it's just all about what that roster spot is costing you. Like, is that affecting you in the standings right now? If you're hemorrhaging somewhere and you're not able to plug that hole because you're rostering Franco, then I think you might want to move on. But if you can just keep him on your bench and you're fielding a lineup every week, and the alternative is to just pick up like a 6th or 7th outfielder or something like that who's in the majors but doesn't have that type of upside, then I would just hold him. But if it's costing you in the standings, then, and it depends who's out there too. Like, who are you drafting him for? Is it someone that's good and that is going to help you, or is it just someone, like are you dropping him for like Enrique Hernandez or Akil Baddoo or someone like that? Then no, I'd probably hold him. But if you can go add someone that's actually going to help you in the 12-teamer, then maybe you move on from him.
Yeah, I'd lean probably not stash them actually in a 12 mix league. I just think they're probably better options than the Baddoos and whoever else you mentioned. Probably just would prefer to churn, and you may end up with somebody even more valuable than Franco eventually. But that is a tough one. I just wanted to not leave that guy hanging. Before we draft our walk-up songs for this week, James, anything else on your mind?
No, we went off on a few tangents, so I cleared out everything that I've been thinking about there earlier.
Nice, man. Well, I always forget which one of us drafts first, since this is kind of an informal draft. We did actually track the other drafts in the spreadsheet, but this one I feel like there's little chance of getting sniped and whatnot. So, why don't you go first this week?
Yeah, I am going to go with my first song off of a mixtape, but I did double check to make sure that it's on Spotify, so we will be able to add it. It's Surf Swag by Lil Wayne off of No Ceilings, which is a mixtape from like 2009, I want to say. I think it used to be called Swag Surf, but then on Spotify, when it was added like a couple of years ago, they kind of changed some things around with that mixtape. But That was that No Ceilings mixtape, like late 2000s. Lil Wayne was just elite Lil Wayne in my opinion, and then he kind of fell off after that. But
that rock album was a low point.
Yeah,
I don't remember when that was, but that definitely led to his. I consider myself a little bit of a Lil Wayne connoisseur, and I don't even know that song, so I obviously have some holes in my knowledge.
This was also just back, like he was releasing like a mixtape every like 2 months back then. So like,
yeah,
you might have just been listening to a different mixtape.
I'll have to get familiar though. What was the name of it so I can listen to it after the show?
Surf Swag.
Surf Swag. Okay, I'm going with a more well-known track, probably for most people anyway. And some people probably shake their head and laugh because they think I'm a gimmick at this point. But I got 5 on it. We got the Loonies. I found an old CD the other day, and that was the first song on it. And when I put it in, I actually laughed out loud, and when the first few beats of that song came on, so I just it's a great song, and I'm surprised Cody Bellinger hasn't used it. Let's just say that, because I think he probably likes that song. But James, good stuff. I'm going to listen to Surf Swag here momentarily. And thanks for all the insight, man. Look forward to Farm Friday, which will be the last Farm Friday of the year. So join us on XM if you can on Friday. James, talk to you then, man.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you all next week on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.